I'd like to welcome everybody and say hello to our virtual alumni career roundtables. My name is Julie Klingler. I'm honored to serve as the director of the Wolf Center for Alumni, Parents, and Friends here at the university. Today, we have brought together 3 prestigious alumni who have joined in simultaneously and agreed to give up their time to serve our 2020 UF College of Science graduates. We also have with us today the Dean of the College of Science, Dr. Jeffrey Fry, and he will moderate today's event. And in a few minutes, Dr. Fry will introduce our prestigious alumni panel. I'd like to next welcome our 2020 grads to this event. We did create this event just for you because we know that the spring has been extremely challenging. So we know you've had a lot of changes to endure that you didn't expect, and now you may find yourself in an uncertain economic environment that's affecting your job search. So we are here to help. And during the next hour, you'll have the chance to learn from our expert panel as they discuss some of the questions that you submitted to us and then other questions as well. We had many alums that could not make it today to this event, so we are recording this session, and you may see that on your screens, and we will make this available for all after the event, so keep that in mind. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Brad Hammer. He serves as the director of University of Findlay's Center for Career and Professional Development. Brad's office has partnered with mine to bring you this event today, so I will turn it over to Brad.
Thanks, Julie. As Julie mentioned, we're here to help the 2020 grads, those of you that are in attendance or that may be watching this afterwards. Our office is here to be able to help with resumes, job search, interviewing, but we all know that the networking component of the job search is what's so important, and that's where most of those job leads or potential interview opportunities come from. So thank you to Julie and to Dr. Fry and the College of Sciences for partnering with us to be able to host this event for the students that have just graduated that are going through this potentially difficult time.
Good. Thank you, Brad. At this time, without further delay, I'd like to turn our attention toward our moderator and introduce you to Dr. Jeffrey Fry. He serves as our Dean of the College of Science. So at this point, without further ado, I will let Dr. Fry take over and moderate the event for us.
Good evening, everyone. As already has been stated, this is an unprecedented time. Hopefully, today's discussion will give you some strategies for success that will allow you to enter the job market in this difficult time. We also are interested in you staying connected to UF. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what has served you well through your academic career and getting your job, so we can make sure that we are serving future students in the best way possible. So to move on to the panel, I will introduce each person. I will not go into their bios. I ask that they take 2 minutes and give us a brief overview of their career. But the first panelist is Marian Lowe. She's a graduate of the class of '97. So Marian, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Great, thanks, Dr. Fry. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Terrific. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks to all the new grads for taking a little time to join us this evening. I'm Marian Lowe. I'm currently serving as a Senior Vice President of Strategy for U.S. Anesthesia Partners, which is the largest provider of anesthesia services in the country. We have about 4,500 clinicians that work in 9 states, providing anesthesia services to patients in hospitals and surgery centers. But this is just sort of my most recent stop in what has been a very interesting and circuitous career path. I left Findlay as a graduate of the pre-vet program, having decided at the last minute that that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life and career. I exited also with a business minor, applied and was accepted into law school in the University of Maryland. So thinking like many of you, what am I going to do for the summer? I accepted an internship in DC doing some sort of, roughly speaking, translational work between scientists and Capitol Hill staff on science policy. Got bit by the bug, got offered a full-time job, deferred my law school enrollment for a couple of years, never went back. I have served in leadership positions in the State Nursing Association in California. I was a partner in a lobbying firm in DC for a decade. And then I moved over into the business side of healthcare and have worked in strategy roles for 2 private equity-backed companies. The first one, the largest operator of surgery centers in the country, that's now part of the Tenet Healthcare Corporation, and this current one that I'm currently in. It's been a great and fun path, and wasn't at all the one I intended, which I suspect is how many of your careers will turn out, but enjoy every step of it. And Dr. Fry, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. Tom Braun Guard is our second panelist, and he is a graduate of the class of '98. So, Tom?
Thank you. So I'm kind of still hung up on the word prestigious. So earlier in the week, someone called me wise. So now I have wise and prestigious. So it's going to take me a while to digest those. So I would share that I just retired in October after 44 years in the HSSE field. Most recently, I was on the senior leadership team of the BP Toledo Business Unit, where I was responsible for HSSE and compliance and ethics, and I was also a safe zone mentor. I was there for 12 years, and prior to that, I was with Owens Corning, where I was a global leader and was functionally responsible for EHS in about 30 plants in 17 countries. Those are the only 2 work ones I'll share, because that accounts for most of it. Actually got an MS from Finley in '96, and then my MBA in '98. And then I have undergrads in biology and safety. I've been on several board of directors, certified safety professional, certified hazardous materials manager. But experientially, I've led teams as big as 60 people with $13 million annual budgets. I've been functionally responsible for $350 million projects. I've probably hired 20 University of Findlay graduates in my time. Have had a bunch of co-ops. But on the same hand, I'd also share there was a lot of UF graduates that I didn't hire. And I've negotiated fines as high as $30 million. So that's kind of me. And then I had my first experience in the spring semester. I actually taught in the ESOH group. So thanks for that, Dr. Murphy. I'm still recovering. So that's me.
Thank you, Tom. And our third panelist is Brad Eken. He's a '99 graduate from the university. So Brad, if you could tell us about yourself, please.
Congratulations to everyone who's graduated. I was graduated in '98. I was part of the last 2 national championship teams for the football in '95 and '97. In leaving Findlay, I actually started with an environmental company in Columbus, and then had the opportunity through Findlay to go down to the Fernald Department of Defense, where they used to purify uranium for nuclear weapons and power plants. My dad was part of the DOD, so it was interesting to me, and that allowed me for 18 months to travel and go back to school and be paid for the master's degrees as it went through. So my career took me a little different way, where I didn't stay in the environmental side, but went into work for a specialty polymer company. And then now I have 27 plants I'm responsible throughout the United States, a couple outside the United States. And we specialize in industrial chemical treatment for water systems, and do most of the chemical engineering and permitting and stuff that goes in through anything to do with water it's being treated through. I have nuclear power plants, HRSG power plants, which are gas powered, steel mills, aluminum casting that make billets for airplanes, all the way down to a hospital and general office buildings. Been in charge between 20 and the highest was 153 guys at one time, which is challenging in its aspect. But the biggest thing that I can tell you guys from out there is that in this times, is that the environmental side of what your degree is a valuable asset to a lot of these companies out there. And it was unique back in the time when I left, and afforded me the opportunity that you just don't have to stay in a role that's just environmental health and safety. There's chemical companies out there. There's applications where here I was a consultant and sales. So don't limit yourself to just looking at the partial side of just the environmental part of it. It's there, but there's also other avenues. And take all the interviews you can, and the more you can, even if you didn't want to have a position, it's a learning experience, and you learn how to respond to them and go through for the next one. So I know it's tough out there. It's also tough from the standpoint of the guys in the field, because we can't even bring in interns, and we can't work with anyone. We can't bring new people into plants. And when you go into a different plant every day, it's hard to do that, especially when you have people you want to bring in for the summer, or need help to help go through those for internships and those things. And everyone's just not allowing us to do it. So it's tough, but stay strong. And that's my part of it. I'm located out of Columbus, Ohio, and enjoyed every minute being up there. Except we were promised that nice, beautiful facility back when I was playing before I got recruited there. And I think it was finished 2 or 3 years afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Now comes the question phase, and I will ask the question and address it to each of the panelists. In turn, if a panelist doesn't have anything to add, they can just say, I don't have anything to add, and we'll move on to the next panelist until we go through all three. So the first question, we'll start with Marion. Tell us how COVID-19 has changed the job search and employment processes.
So many ways. So I think it's a couple of things. So I'm in the healthcare field now, and I would say, for one, from a job search perspective, the number of opportunities have certainly dwindled significantly. I don't expect that to be a permanent situation. All the signs in the economy are that we will rebound from this fairly quickly, but probably not completely for another 6 or 7 quarters. But that being said, it used to be so important to meet people in person and engage with them. And when you think about most of the white collar jobs in the economy right now, decent number of them, perhaps a majority of them in many locations, are still virtual. People went remote in a matter of days, and it will take us months to get back into our offices because of all of the concern that people have about infection, transmission, and just the inability to source cleaning products to keep facilities open. And so when you think about prospecting for a job, assume that you're going to be on video conference. Put your best foot forward on there. Get yourself into a good, clean environment to do that and present in a professional way, because that may very well be your only exposure before you get an offer. And I think from a process standpoint, when you think about onboarding for a role, you're probably going to be working very virtually with people. So they're not going to be able to tell whether you're working 5 hours or 10 hours by seeing you in the office. They're going to know if you're putting in time by what you produce. So the quality of your work, the responsiveness of your engagement, whether during the search process or as you enter a new role, are going to be incredibly important, because those are going to be the visible cues that your new colleagues get, or that your potential employer gets, about the way you're going to contribute to that organization.
Hey, thank you. Tom.
So I'll approach it from a different angle. So everywhere I've been, the SOH function owns the pandemic plan. And we've been doing pandemic plans for a long time. So if you're in the SOH arena and you do get an interview, I would be very prepared to talk about pandemic plans in terms of what they are, the planning, the implementation, and the monitoring, because that's the hot button right now, right? So be prepared to discuss that, because if you're in the SOH arena, you actually will own that going forward. So that would be my challenge, and I would echo everything's probably at this point going to be virtual, but I do know for VP and Marathon, everyone's going back to work Monday. I mean, back in the office and back on the road. So I think there may be some readily light at the end of the tunnel in terms of actually things starting to move again. So, but I would challenge you to be prepared to have a discussion around pandemic plans and being able to manage that process.
Okay, thank you. Brad.
Yes, one of the big things, with that is, I think the generation that's coming out from graduating has a better thing. One of the things that Marianne had mentioned was the communication and virtual, and going through that. And unlike myself, even though it's part of this communication plan, is being able to connect and do that. Unfortunately, I have failed to prepare in that because I can't get my video to launch. But knowing when you go in, or if you have an interview with somebody, which one they use. Do they use Zoom? Do they use 365? Do they use, what platform they're using, so that you can get on it beforehand and make sure you don't have any troubles with audio and video for interview process when you're going through. We also see, like I'd mentioned before, it's hard to get into plants or get into a face-to-face things that you would prefer to do during these situations. But it's also what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that I believe job openings are going to start coming back. I've probably spent 25 hours at night talking to guys I've worked with 15 for 20 years, and they're going into forced retirement at the plan. Either take it now to help reduce with that, or be penalized on insurance and things down the road. So we have a lot of that top end part of it that may be going to open up spaces down the road. So it may be semi-positive, and it even though it doesn't look that way now, but being prepared on both sides of that, knowing that some of them are going to be flex. Some are allowing people to go back into plants, wear mask, distance, and there's some places you have to go through and you have to carry sanitation wipes with you, everything you touch and wipe down. Just be prepared to be able to face whatever is going to be there, and on top of whatever, if you can find out beforehand, if you're doing the online stuff with them for interviews, what platform they're doing, so you don't have any issues during that. That goes a long way in showing that you're prepared and that you're interested in that area. So, and keep in touch with people when you're there. Just because you're visually doing it and you can't go down to the cube or the other person's office, it also goes a long way to know that, hey, I haven't talked to you in a week, is everything good? And those type of things. So communication and staying in touch, especially when you're working remotely.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What are 5 main traits you look for in employees? Marion?
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute there. So I've got it down to 3. And I can't take credit for these. One of my favorite business authors came up with it. But it's humble, hungry, and smart. And I'll give you my basics for that. Humble as in, like, you're a good team player. You are proud of the work that you do. You take credit for what's yours, and you share credit freely. Hungry. You want to get out there. You're willing to do the grunt work as much as the glory work. You work hard. You contribute effectively. Smart. It's not just about the IQ in your brain. It's about the EQ as well, and understanding the emotional intelligence of your peers and your colleagues, and understanding how to work effectively in teams. Those 3 things, to me, in my career, have formed what has been the basis of really effective team members. And so when I'm hiring, I'm trying to ask interview questions that tell me basically, is this person not a jerk? And do they have the skills to get the job done? Because at the end of the day, I can teach anyone that's smart how to do a job. I can't teach them how to be a good team player. That's what I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
So first of all, I want someone that's a warrior and not a victim. And that may sound like pie in the sky, but I actually believe in that. I want folks who are going to be accountable and responsible, and accept accountability and responsibility. I truly believe that truth and integrity trump everything. So I want folks that have a good value set, that have a good moral code of conduct. And then I want folks who are going to be intentional in their relationships, and intentional with assignments they may get. I want folks that don't walk by things, and I look at that three ways. They don't walk by the good, they acknowledge it. They don't walk by the bad, they intervene. And if somebody loves on them enough to not walk by them, they respond appropriately with thank you. So those are mine. I think I only did 4, but that's kind of, for me, the high level that I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you. And Brad, please.
And some are going to be repetitive, but communication skills and being able to engage. And what I mean by that is being able to speak at all levels, whether you're at the white collar level down to working with somebody on the floor. You have to be able to engage and speak to somebody who's a vice president, a president, all the way down to somebody who's a general laborer, and be able to make them engaged into what you're doing so that whatever you're trying to accomplish can be successful and everyone is working in there. Organizational skills. There's one of the things that drives me nuts when you get somewhere and you've had to put 3 hours of work in from 10 to midnight or 10 to 1 in the morning to get up and drive somewhere, and the person's not organized or doesn't have the things prepared that you need to accomplish for that day. Truthfulness. And there's one of the things, and I learned this the hard way and earlier on in my career, is that that one little white lie that may go through the rest of it, it will come back to get you, and your reputation is everything. So if you make a mistake, and we all do, admit it, but have a path forward of how you're going to correct that and resolve it at the end of the day, to say that here's what happened, here's what the failure points were, here's how we're going to move on. Just don't say, hey, I'm sorry. Always bring a path forward to fixing that resolution, but be truthful, because it'll always come back and bite you. Being able to work as a self-starter, but also as part of a team. So being with that, if somebody gives you a project to do, don't be the person that just goes and asks 20 other people, how can I go get this? How can I go do that? Try doing it on your own first and getting all that you can and learning the lingo and the acronyms of sites, plants, equipment, area, so that you know what you're talking to when you go to somebody to ask for help, that you understand their lingo and you've done the most you can and you're at a roadblock and you need help. That goes much further than just going to somebody and say, hey, I just got handed this project. Do you know how to do this? And just being familiar with what audience you're talking to, and knowing what part of that is and what table you're sitting at, so that you know that those people can be engaged into it. And you're not talking at 10,000 foot level when you're down on the floor doing something or trying to do a safety part of it, but be engaged from that, and knowing that now a part of this environmental health and safety with these things, that people are working remotely, people are coming back into plants, and you got to think there's weeks, days. There's one plant, that it was 76 days on Monday before I'd been back in there because of this. And you forget some of the rules, you forget some of the safety aspects of it. And it's one of those things to sit down and just go through it again with them, make sure everybody's on the same page and that you're organized and you show an effort and you're engaging in with that group. It goes a long way.
Okay, thank you. This next question is specific for Marion. as a female leader, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Ha. It's a love-hate relationship with that question, because in many ways, and I'm fortunate in this standpoint, female hasn't been a defining characteristic, pro or con, in my career. But I would say the one thing as a woman that we're probably cultured into being less skilled at is negotiating our salaries. And I think it took me a while to be an aggressive and effective advocate for myself in a way that presented the strongest case for what I was asking for. You know, you don't want to come off as whiny, you don't want to come off as shrill, you don't want to come off as overly aggressive. It's very easy to get labeled with those adjectives if you approach it wrong. So figuring out the art of negotiation took a while, but if there are women on the line who want a little recipe for learning how to do that more effective, I highly encourage reading Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. I got some really great tips out of that.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions here that are sort of along the same lines, so I'll kind of combine these together if you'd care to field these. So the first one was, what was the biggest adjustment you needed to make when transitioning to your first position after college? And what are some rookie mistakes you made in the beginning of your career that you see other new employees make now? So Marion, we'll come back to you, please.
Biggest transition. Wow, there were a couple of things, and these may sound a little quaint. Man, as it turns out, I miss the academic schedule. There is no break. There is no like, oh, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm done here. I'm going to go do something fun for a while. It is a different environment to walk into a, full-time 40-hour week set of responsibilities. And to always be, you go from being the senior in college, big kid on campus, to being the most junior person that everyone assumes knows nothing. And just culturally adjusting to both the time and the commitment and the need to stay focused for that long, and then getting used to being the rookie on the block took some time. As far as things that I stumbled over, the good and the bad of, knowing and being confident in yourself is that you should always feel like you have a voice and speak up. The bad thing is when you're first out of school, you actually don't know bupkis about most of the things that you're walking into. And I'll give you an example from my first job in Washington. I was reviewing a piece of legislation that was revising major portions of the healthcare, the Medicare program, and replete with acronyms on every corner. I had to look up everything and what it meant, put together a summary, gave it to my boss. It was theoretically to be distributed for our clients to understand what was included in this massive piece of legislation. And, spent about 24 hours straight working on this, dropped it on her desk, got it back the next day, and she was like, I can't send this anywhere. And I tried very hard to convince her that no, I knew that this was a good work product. And she very kindly said, it's okay. I've asked one of your colleagues, a more senior person in the organization, to take a crack at this and put it together. Tell you what to do. Stick this in your desk, and 6 months from now, you pull it out and come back and tell me whether this is a good work product. And she was right. 6 months later, I knew so much more, and I was able to recognize what I didn't know. And so I think it's really important when you go in to any new organization to be comfortable not knowing things and to be comfortable asking questions. It's okay. No one expects you to know those answers. And don't get out over your ski tips on something where you're on shaky ground. I stepped in that one quite a few times early in my career. Turned out okay in the end, but still stepped in it.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
So my first round in college, I was actually on an athletic scholarship. And you know, you actually realize at some point in your life that you actually got a whole bunch of special considerations because of that. So I think one of the biggest challenges is the actual realization that you're not in college anymore, and the expectations are completely different. And some were already touched on, but and I, you know, my dad told me a million times growing up, and I never listened to him until I was in the middle of it. But he always told me not to confuse pedigree with performance, and I did that. I had a pedigree, but I knew nothing about performance. So, and the other thing I learned is little things in the business world or in an industry actually mean big things. Being on time took on a relevance that I never realized. Expectations took on a relevance I never realized. And there was a lot of humbling happened right out of the gate. So that's what I would share.
Okay, thank you. And Brad, please.
The biggest thing that I've seen out there that, you know, and learned the very hard way is that when you go into certain situations, you're going to be dragged into projects or asked to be on projects. Refuse to use the blame game on something when you go into it, because somebody probably sitting around that table or in that meeting helped design that product, that safety program, the thing that failed. And when you go into things and say, well, this isn't the right way, or this is how we learned to do it, or this is what it's going to be, or we did it this way somewhere else, refuse that urge to do it, because somebody there is going to take offense to it potentially because they were helped design that. But come to there with an open mind and a plan, and focus on things of how you're going to overcome that, change it, and go through. Tom did a great deal on this, and I think it goes into Marianne's aspect with it too. And I'm a firm believer in it because it took me 5 years to learn it. But document everything from the beginning. Whether you're a male, female, however it goes, if you can document everything. And how Tom had started out his thing is that he was on so many projects or so many dollars, so many things. Those are things as you go down the road are huge resume builders. And you always think you can remember them, but you won't. So as you go through your career in those projects, say, hey, you know, this was a $60 million project, resulted in this. It was an ROI cost savings of 30 million over 5 years for that. I was a part of that project or have leads it. So document everything you can and keep an Excel spreadsheet or a running total of that. Because when it comes down time to sit there and negotiate for raises, salaries, when you have those facts and figures, you get away from the circumstantial stuff that somebody can say, well, not really here or not that. You have it as a fact and signed off projects, those type of things as you go through. So being able to not use the blame stuff when you're in meetings, when you go through, but have a path forward, have a plan, work together as a team to overcome it, and how we can change or make it better, and document every little thing you can and keep it, you know, on your iPad or your computer or wherever it is, and that you can take that with you everywhere and go through. And it's been great. We're, you know, we had to use it today. You know, I'm on a $600 million building right now that's going through, and we're building a HRSA plan on the second side of it that, you know, we had to re-engineer some things. And the guy's like, well, why? And I said, well, we just got done building a 600 million one, and this is what was missed in it. This is what is missed in this bid, but this is what it saved the end all customer. And as of right now, they're actually designing that phase of it together with us. That wasn't even part of our scope. That ended up being an extra $1 million change order for us. So those are huge things that you can take and use as resume builders. When you go for raises and those type of things, keep that type of documentation because it'll go a long way in the end.
Okay, thank you. According to my schedule, I don't believe we have any more time for questions. Is that correct, Julie? Okay, so moving on to the next part, I ask, do any of the participants out in the audience, so to speak, does anybody want to share anything that they learned from today, a valuable takeaway from today's session? You can just come off mic and go ahead and speak out.
I'll go. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank Marion for the book recommendation. I'm looking very forward to reading that book, so thank you. And also, I think one of the things that I found to be very helpful was the qualities that you all look for in the folks that you're hiring, and in the interview process, how to present yourself in that manner. And I found it interesting, Brad, that you had mentioned to document everything, because I know that our Center for Career Services does recommend that you do that, so that you have those nuggets for your resume down the line. Because like you said, you think in the moment that you'll remember it, but in fact, you don't. So thank you. I felt that those are some pretty big takeaways.
You're most welcome. I hope you enjoy that book.
Anyone else care to comment? Okay, hearing none. I'd now would like to go to each of the panelists and ask if they have any last comments. So again, we'll go through the order. Marion?
Sure. You know, I would just say, recognize that this is an unprecedented time, hopefully one that you'll never again see in your careers. I certainly hope to not go through this. Be patient with yourself, be patient with the organizations that you're dealing with. You know, most HR organizations that are dealing with return to work operations right now have been through, in many instances, layoffs of their own staff or of staff within their organizations. And they're trying to figure out how to get everyone back into work. They're understaffed, overworked, and they may not be as responsive as they want to be or as you want them to be. So be patient. Two, you know, be realistic in your expectations. You may not get the dream job coming out of school, but whatever job you get, go and do the best you can at it. You know, being in a big pond or a little pond doesn't matter, as long as what you do makes a difference and teaches you something that you can leverage along the way. And I would say, you know, thirdly, you know, if what you're looking for in the field that you're looking in isn't available, be flexible. Go, you know, if you know, I'm a perfect example of this. I graduated with a degree that pointed me in one specific direction, and I ended up in a very different direction. I have enjoyed every step along the way. Give yourself the time at this point in your career. You will never need an explanation for your career choices right now, post-COVID, ever. No one will ever question why you made a bizarre decision with this time in your life, because everyone will remember what this looked like. So go try something that sounds fun or different if you're not finding what you want. Have a good time at it, and as the economy comes back around, get back to what you thought your purpose was. But don't hold yourself to something that's just not working out. Go find joy and experience in whatever is available.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Okay, well, I think the first thing I would share is that if you're going to be on my team, I have books that I actually make you read. And I'll share a couple of those. One is called The Servant. It's by James Hunter. And I believe, other than the Bible, it's the greatest leadership book ever written. Another one is called Chop Wood, Carry Water, about simple things actually are huge things. Another one is called Make Your Bed. And the last one I would recommend is 21 Great Leaders. So if you're going to be with me, you're going to read those books and actually a bunch more over time. But I would throw that out there. I would challenge everybody to actually be able to articulate the uniqueness of the University of Findlay. So when I taught my first class the first night at the University of Findlay, I started reading things off the first things you see when you go out on a website and you start paging down, and there's very poignant statements about what the University of Findlay is, what it represents, what it's about. And there wasn't a single person in my class that knew those things or could articulate those things. So number one, you know, the reason the ESOH degree at Findlay is so recognized and so hireable is the diversity of it. It's not singled in on a single thing, but I think the other great thing about the University of Findlay is the uniqueness of the university in and of itself, and you need to be able to do that in an interview. I think that's huge. I think the other challenge is you need to be intentional, very intentional about relationships. Not only the relationships of the group or the team you end up on or the facility, but regardless of what job you're in, you have external customers and people you serve also. And so I just challenge everyone to be intentional in relationships. And this may sound amazingly simple and stupid, but the best way to do that is never eat lunch alone and never eat lunch with the same person. So I would challenge you to do that. And I think maybe the last thing I'll share is I don't think I had a single job in my life that I planned on getting. They were all phone calls that I was prepared to go do something about. My dad in Central Pennsylvania farming, that's called preparing for rain, being ready. So every single job I've gotten, out of the blue, the phone rang, but I was ready to go do what I was being asked about doing. So I would challenge everybody to be prepared, because you're going to get a phone call that you're not expecting, and it's going to end up being a great opportunity for you. So prepare for rain. And then I would just circle back again and say, especially in today's times, be a warrior, don't be a victim. No one wants a victim, everyone wants a warrior. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Brad.
Yes, you know, since everyone's throwing books out there, I feel bad because I haven't done it yet. But the best one that I've seen was my ex-Navy SEAL that went through. It was called Extreme Ownership. And it is a good read with circumstances that goes through, even from a beginner standpoint all the way up to owners of companies. And it's about taking accountability for things as you go through. And it's a good read when you get through it. But some of the other things I would say, that even though you're in a position, or when you get a position, get involved in everything you can. People sitting around you, if you got extra time, and it goes to the what Tom just said about relationships, and help out, even if it's not in your area. You know, if you can offer a couple hours a week to help them on a project, get involved in those things, because those also help you build your resume. That's saying that you weren't just part of health and safety, but you were part of engineering a new process with a group. It'll get you involved in other areas that you may become more interested in down the road, and can be promoted on to different areas. And when you're in those companies or other places, use all the resources you can, whether it pertains to you or not. Every training aspect you can get involved in, every schooling that they'll offer you, and those type of things. And you'll find that in a lot of those things, they'll come to you one way or the other, whether it's personal life or in your business life. You know, take that as you can go, because it's a lot easier to have them pay for it and do it when you go on. And they're big resume builders also. But as you go through this, you know, take the time at the end of the day to go through lessons learned, especially on projects when you go through, because especially as part of the new person, you know, you get thrown into a project, go through, and you'll put all these ideas out, and they'll say, hey, we've already tried this and it didn't work. And one of the things I would recommend is that when you go through or ask that, say, what have we done in the past for the same thing that didn't work, so that we don't waste our efforts or time, especially in this critical aspect where everyone is working remotely, or extra time that's being put into it that you may or not have. So don't waste your time doing things that have already been tried. Look at that and then say, hey, listen, do you guys have a lessons learned binder on these projects? And if they don't, start one and use that as part of your career path. And you can take that with you everywhere, as long as it's not sensitive material and the rest of it. But gather those as you go through, because if you're at a plant for 20 years, you'll learn that, every 5-7 years, a lot of places turn over. And you'll go through and somewhere down the line, you say, no, we worked on this project before, this stuff didn't work, and here's my binder and what we did to document it. So it gets back into documentation part of it. But take away those 3 things, they have been enormous for me. I have probably 60 binders sitting behind me right now from plants and projects that I've worked on, of what worked and what failed. And there's nothing more valuable when you look to see if you're a value asset of that, when people from other sides of the plants or different ones call you and say, hey, listen, I know you really don't work there anymore, but you remember this project? And I said, yeah, I got a binder back here. We'll go look at it and I can send you the information. So documentation, get involved in everything you can, whether it pertains to you or not. The relationships and lessons learned are 3 big things that have taken my career path from where I thought I was going to be just a simple peon going through the rest of it to now you're running $600 to $800 million projects every year.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the program. I hope that all of you listening would join me in thanking our panelists for their time and their comments today. So I hope you all found or heard something valuable that will help you in this time, this difficult time, and also understand that the career path that you've maybe thought you wanted might not be where you end up. So again, thank you for your time today. And again, thank the panelists, and I will now turn it over to Julie.
Dr. Fry, thank you for being here today and moderating this session for us. We truly appreciate your help, and you've done a wonderful job in leading this discussion. I'd like to also say thank you to the alumni panelists. We've heard great reading recommendations from Tom. We've heard great technical information, industry stuff from Brad, and great leadership advice from Marion. I could not be more pleased with the way the conversation's gone today. Thank you all for taking the time to be here with us to help mentor these recent UF alums. You truly have made a special impact on their career journey today, and you've done so in great Oilers spirit. So thank you, alumni panelists. I'd also like to thank our alums for being here today. Thank you. Please remember that the Alumni Office and the Center for Career and Professional Development are here with you always. Thanks everyone who worked so hard on my team who worked so hard to make this event a big success. And as I said earlier in the session, we had many alums who couldn't join us tonight. So we have recorded this event and we plan to send this and share this with other College of Science alums as well. So now I'll turn things over to Brad for a final goodbye.
Before I say goodbye, it looks like Dr. Murphy took his mic off. I think he has something that he wants to say.
No, just ready to say thank you to everyone.
Oh, okay.
It was a great conversation. Thank you, panelists.
Yes, I want to echo the gratitude expressed by Dr. Fry, Dr. Murphy, and Julie. This really was a great session. All of the advice, like was mentioned, regarding the books, as well as career advice and getting alumni or soon recent graduates started. And to those new grads, always know that our services are available. You have lifetime services through the CCPD. So if you do need help, that's what we're here for. So please reach out. Okay, get back to Julie.
All right. Well, once again, thanks to everyone for being here this evening and sharing your time with us. And please know we truly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you and good night to everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.